Hi, Danny.
I'm glad. Yeah, that'd be cool.
So the normal progression is
He's a nice guy.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Board of Selectmen, Highway Commissioner, Cemetery Commissioner meeting of January 11th, 2016, 6:35. First order of business, please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We do mean for all.
I just want to quickly thank the Capital Improvement Committee, those of you that tuned in a little bit early, caught the Capital Improvement meeting with department heads. Mr. Balkunas made an announcement. We have a $25,000 grant through the state to aid us in our capital improvement planning as we attempt to move forward and make sure we have equipment and things necessary for people to do their job. So I just want to thank the Capital Improvement Committee for a nice presentation, a nice job tonight. Mr. Balkunas, nice job on the grant. Thank you.
Thank you.
First up, acceptance of minutes, 12/28/2015. What is the board's pleasure?
Mr. Chairman, I move to accept the Board of Selectmen minutes of December 28th, 2015 as written.
Second.
Motion made and second. Any discussion or corrections? Hearing none. All in favor, state aye.
Aye.
Unanimous. Appointments and resignations. I believe we have none. Public comments, citizen comments. Anybody wishing to be heard on an item that is not on the agenda, now is your chance. Hearing none. Public hearings. I believe we have none. Licensing and permits. I believe we have none. 7, public business. Under 7A, we have the Board of Assessors. Assessors, hours of operation. I noticed the principal assessor and one of our board members is here, but Mr. Balkunas, I will turn the floor to you for a moment.
So, board members, the board had previously voted that we're going to open Town Hall for public business on Wednesdays, beginning the first of the year, and we had our first successful opening this past week. And the Board of Assessors had previously alerted me to the fact that they felt as though there was a staffing issue in their office, and they could not open on a Wednesday. And they wanted to come in and meet with you because their position is really inconsistent with the board, and the only way those things typically get resolved is to bring everyone in and have a face-to-face type of meeting. But I'll defer to them if you would give them an opportunity to speak.
Like to come up?
Do you know when you wrote this? Okay. Try to read that.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Good evening.
I think I know most of you. I am Joanne Simzak, member on the Board of Assessors, and with me is our principal assessor, Lisa Berg. We are here because we have basically been unable to clone Lisa to be able to do the work by herself. We cannot get another person. We're working with 1.5 people. We gave you an outline in there of what other towns have been doing as far as staffing. And when we are analyzing towns such as Oxford, Southbridge, Charlton, Webster, Douglas, they all have more than one clerk in their office. They even have 2 and 3, plus their assessor. And they have more opportunity to get their work done on that basis. We right now are working with 1 assessor and half a clerk. And if you look at the following pages of all the things for which our office is responsible for, which major impact to the town is the cash flow that comes into this town, that if we don't get our job done, you don't get money coming in, along with record keeping and being able to keep up with that work. We just can't do it with half a clerk. So the only way we have been able to at least stay a little bit close to being where we should be, and we're not totally where we should be, I don't believe, and I think Lisa will agree to that. We're going through revals, and we have to keep all of the records that are involved, review things, deal with the public, deal with the calls. We just can't do it with half a clerk.
The workload is pretty heavy right now, too, because we have our inspectors going out doing cyclical inspections. We have to inspect the interior of every house and measure the outside of the building and all outbuildings once every 9 years. This has been going on for like 1.5 years now. I'm doing all the data entry of 5,000 cards, and my note on the bottom shows that a card might take every card seems to have something that needs to be adjusted. So it could take 5 to 10 minutes to do one card. The more difficult ones can take 20 to 30 minutes. And if you're getting phone calls and people coming up to the counter, by the time you get back to what you were doing and finding where your place was and where you left off, it could take half an hour, 45 minutes sometimes just to do one card. People are getting letters in the mail now for to call Vision Government Solutions to set up an appointment to do the interior inspections. And we're inundated with telephone calls and people coming into the office because they want to know, is this legit? How does this work? Why are you doing this? Nobody's ever come to my house before, or you just came to my house. So above and beyond everything that you see in our workload, we're adding this on to it. And I just can't keep up.
Question.
Mr. Joseph?
Lisa, how many hours a week do you work?
40,
How many hours does the clerk work?
21.
Okay. What's this position called? It seems like everybody has it, either in-house or on their own, or with a vendor. What is a data collector, and how much of that do we do?
I do it all.
You
So
do
we
all
have
that.
400 building permits that I have to go out and inspect. Every sale in town, I have to go out to the sale. We have a little over 100 sales that I go out on. I measure the outside of the building. I do, in any outbuildings that there are, I do the inspections on the interior. Then I come back and make any data changes that need to be done. Towns that you look at on the list that I gave you, most of them, the position for 30 or 40 hours is data collecting only.
Okay, thank you.
Anybody else? Mr. Fox?
Has the workload in your office over the past, say, 4 years, what % increase would you anticipate that it's changed?
Well, I don't know if it's changed. It's gone up a little bit. I can't give you a percentage, but I can tell you that there's not enough people in there to keep it up. Everything looks good. You don't get any complaints out of the assessor's office because I have to prioritize things. For example, in our contract with Vision, I was going to do all the building permits. They were going to do all the data entry. I switched that up with them because there's nobody in the office. So I send them out on the building permits, and I'm doing all the data entry so that there's a body in the office. My clerk's only there until 1 o'clock, and she's not there at all on Thursdays. So when she's not there, a lot doesn't get done. So the workload's gone up, maybe, more sales, building, more permits. We used to only get like 200 and 250 permits a year. We're up to 400 now.
Okay, the reason I asked that question is, you know the answer better than I do about the workload. Has it changed significantly since before we closed for the offices on Wednesday to the public?
I've been closed for 7 years on Wednesdays.
Okay.
Even if nothing changed, we're half a person less. Therefore, somewhere, the work has to get done, which means that we have to make it up. The way that we make it up is closing our access to the public. We're really not a public access-driven office. When you come in there, a lot of the information the public wants, years ago appraisers used to come into our office, a lot of that is online. What we are dealing with are people, when it comes time for excise tax season, who need assistance in doing that. It's more customer, so to speak, service that they need help in filling out forms that they need to do, which means if you're in the middle of doing an assessing situation, reviewing data, your odds of making a mathematical error, I think, get increased because you're now taken away to wait at somebody up at that window, come back, and go back to where you were at. So the constant interruptions are very likely, and I can remember years ago one woman where it was human error that her tax bill went up $1,000, and the error was that when the field card was done for the next year, they reversed two numbers. Instead of her house being 24 by 40, it was 42 by 40, thereby increasing her tax bill $1,000. So we can't afford to be sloppy on what we do, or we're going to end up having more work to undo the damage that gets done. So I think it's important to have a block of time that is uninterrupted. When we had a full-time clerk, the clerk could at least be accommodating someone who may have come to the window and left the principal assessor to do some of this work. Now, she's bogged down with all of it, and the constant interruptions are a problem. Besides, we have to keep records for the state that are mandatory records.
Thank
A
you.
lot of things have fallen behind that nobody sees because, like I said, we have to prioritize. So we're getting done what needs to be done, which is mandated by the state, but there's other things that are falling behind that nobody sees unless you work in the office. It's not run as efficiently as it was 7 years ago when I had Michelle as full-time help.
Mr. Joseph?
So what is your request tonight, and what is the next best request that you have above the request that you want to make tonight?
In a perfect world, we'd have a full-time person in there for a clerk. If we can't have that, we need to be able to close to get some of our work done. We can't be 100% there for the public. We need a day to focus on doing some of the paperwork that needs to be done uninterrupted.
Okay, can I ask the town administrator something? Yep. Greg,
Sir,
you missed a good decoy auction the other night, by the way.
sorry to hear that.
Yeah. What I would, is it our responsibility to take a vote to give them permission to be closed on a particular day?
You determine the hours of the building. And the position is that if an office wants to be open hours different than what you state, then I would suggest the board agree to that.
Okay. And the reason I ask, Mr. Chairman, is I'd like us to make that suggestion, hopefully as a temporary or stopgap. And then I would like us, through you, to instruct the town administrator to sit down with the assessors, with Lisa, and come up with a plan including the optimum, not the optimum, but the next highest level of staffing and cost, because you might want a clerk another quarter time or half time, you might want a data collector a half time, and a clerk half time, I don't know. But I would like to see a plan that says this is what we're facing. And I don't know how I would feel about it, but I'd like to see that. Does that make sense?
Yes, I think so, but I was going to ask Mr. Root or Mr. Massey.
Yeah. Oh, go ahead, John.
I agree with Mr. Joseph to the degree that we need to find an alternative, and it should be a short-term stopgap measure, because I think that it's not. I'm pretty sure that this board has made its policy, its public policy of opening 5 days a week pretty clear, and that's the goal that we want to achieve. So if we need to do a stopgap measure in order to figure out how we can do that in the assessor's office, that's fine with me. I don't want it to turn into, we declare that we're open 40 hours a week.
Make exceptions. Yep.
And then we start making exception after exception after exception. The policy should be that we are open 40 hours a week in all departments. Well, we're open Monday through Friday in all departments, and that should be the end result of asking Greg to look into any alternatives for us.
Mr. Massey?
Yeah, I agree. I agree with Paul and Jonathan that we should be open at 40 hours. I also think that looking at a comprehensive, not just for the assessor's office, if we need another floater to help with these other departments, I think we've all talked about beefing up our staffing in the building to begin with. I know that starting with an admin down in the police department, but something to that effect where if this coverage is needed and people can be cross-trained, they can, right, to fill in these things.
Good idea. Good, it's a better idea.
Joanne, was there any thought given to closing Friday instead of Wednesday? Friday's only 5 hours anyway. Try that. Be open a full 8-hour day on Wednesday for the people.
I originally did close on Fridays because I figured it's less hours that were open to the public. I thought that was the right thing to do. And the last town administrator disagreed and said if, some were going to be closed on Wednesdays, some on Fridays, we have to make it the same. So I switched from Fridays to Wednesdays. I thought it was in the best interest of the town to be open, you know, for the full 8 hours on Wednesday and only take 5 from the public.
Would that be something to look at, Greg,
I would
for
put it
short term?
So, Mr. Chairman, just to follow up, Lisa, is it, because we're doing that, we are reassessing everybody's property, is this, it's not necessarily a typical workload because of what's going on, you know, every 9 years, we just happen to follow?
No,
Is it-
that's just the straw that broke the camel's back. I can't, I'm tired, I can't do it anymore. I'm making errors. I take pride in my work, I take pride in my assessments. I go above and beyond with the public. I take extra time with the public when they come into my office, and they're the ones that are suffering. And it looks bad when my office makes mistakes. I had a bill go out, I think it was like $15,000 increase in value because of human error. I can't have that kind of stuff going on in my office. It makes us look bad. So I figured being closed to the public and keeping things up is in the best interest of everybody. But this cyclical thing it just put us over the edge.
Mr. Massey?
Just that comment there, Lisa, I think you need more help, I think, in your office, period. You know, looking at what the other towns have, I mean, we're just as big or bigger than some of those on the list, population-wise and other metric-wise. So I really think we should look at having someone else for the town hall. I really do. Maybe as budgeting season comes in. Or
Yeah, please.
Then
are you going to second what I said, or?
specifically, when are they asking to close? Or when are they asking for a variation from the
Kind of
hours we've set?
I came in here.
I'll kneel in front of you, maybe that will help.
No, I came in at the end of it, and, you know, it's not just Lisa's office, and, yeah,
She
it's
struggles
very
really bad.
I've never had full-time help. This is a major election year, as you know, and it will be above and beyond something like what you're going through. But, you know, I have to tell you, cross-training failed miserably. We did it. We tried our best, but it was very difficult, and clerks were being pulled all over the place, trying to cover 2 and 3 offices at the same time. And because of that, errors happened, and it's just not feasible. These offices are so different from one another. You know, you can cross-train to the point where, yeah, I know what you do a little bit, and I know what he does a little bit, but they're very, very different, and they're governed by different, you know, state laws and local laws and so forth. But, you know, we really, for years we've been hearing, we look at other towns and we're comparing with the population, and we know we're miserably understaffed.
Yep.
Well, great, but we need to, I know we serve the public, but it's very hard because a good portion of our job is not, it's what, the work that's generated from serving the public. And when you're trying to do that, or you're trying to balance money like the treasurer or the collector, or you're trying to do these incredible mathematics that I can't even balance my checkbook. This woman walks on water, trust me. And to try to do that while you're answering the phone and answering people's questions, and it's just impossible. We really need somebody up at the counter where the department heads can do the majority of the work that they need to do behind the scenes. And I think, you know, I would hope that you'd give some consideration to maybe closing on Friday as opposed to Wednesday. We'd be open 4 full days in a row, and including one evening, and maybe the short day would give us the time to do what we need to do. Thank you. I'll get up now.
Thank you, Laura.
Mr. Massey?
You know, that's point well taken. It's kind of where I was going, but Laura said it much better than I could, obviously. I think we need a comprehensive staffing plan for the town hall, guys. I think it's time. I mean, we limped along for several years here with minimal help, and now that we're coming into budgeting season, I think we should look at, Greg, and I'll look to you through the chair to help us with that. What do we need? Where are the pain points? Where the public interaction seems to be where the sticking points are, because people have all this work to do. But the catch-22 is that's what we're here for. So I think we need to look at that.
Mr. Joseph?
Specifically, what are you asking for, at least in my mind, temporarily, for a variation from the hours that we recently set?
Well, I think Fridays is reasonable to be closed down.
Say again?
I think Fridays is reasonable to be closed down for the day. I can tell you the work's not going to get done if I'm open.
Okay. In the long term, I would want to look at Friday very carefully. Whether it's blue collar or white collar, people are often paid at the end of a week. And sometimes people forget to do something during a week and they try to sneak it in on Friday, or they get paid on Thursday or Friday. So I'd want to take that into consideration in whatever we do in terms of staffing hours. All right?
I just want to let you know, too, I think there was some misconception when I was closed on Wednesdays all this time, that I didn't answer the phone or service the public at all.
You've always answered the phone.
I answer the phone when we're closed, and I answer all emails.
I know you do.
And so I try to get things done even though I'm closed. So it's really just walk-ins that are coming in, they're not being serviced.
Okay. Mr. Chairman, I'd be willing to move that we authorize the assessor's office to be closed as long as I'm clear on how they want to vary from the hours we've set, but that it be temporary, and that the town administrator meet with the assessors to start to come up with a comprehensive solution, affordable comprehensive solution for them. And then I would keep the motion about doing a comprehensive staffing study for the building separate, because I think that involves a whole lot more.
That's two things.
Before I take a second on that, does anybody have anything else for the assessors or any other questions for the administrator?
I was wondering if Mr. Joseph would add to his motion that the motion is based on a special circumstance, a once-in-a-decade circumstance of the assessments being made.
Gladly. Gladly, Michelle.
Second.
That we grant that temporarily due to extenuating circumstances in the assessor's office.
I'll second that.
Everybody clear?
Yep.
From the press? Hang on.
I would move that that due to extenuating circumstances in the assessor's office, that we grant the assessor's office a variation in the hours of operation that we recently set for the entire building, and that the town administrator meet with the assessors to come up with an affordable staffing solution for them, period. I would certainly vote for Mr. Marcy's suggestion, but I would make that separate, because I think that would involve considerably more time and work. Whereas I think this one is much more focused and more easily done by the town administrator.
Still a second?
Second.
Yes, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Unanimous. Second motion, Mr. Marcy.
So I move that the chairman instruct the town administrator to work with the different department heads as part of budget season to create a comprehensive staffing plan for the coming fiscal year. I'll throw the word affordable in there that Paul mentioned, because that's actually a word I missed. Yeah, that's the motion.
Second.
And a comment after the second.
Motion made and second. Any comments?
So, I think, again, everybody's looking at what they need for the coming year now. So once we see how much, we don't know how much money we have from cherry sheets yet, but maybe soon we will get an indication of that. But maybe as the department heads each submit their wants and needs, a staffing component can be added to that, so Greg can compile everything and meet with everybody so we have that. I mean, it doesn't have to be, we may not get everything, but at least we'll be clear on what the Board of Health needs, what Laura needs, what Lisa needs, library, whoever's here, just have it all there so we can see it all at once. That's the way I would do it.
Mr. Fox?
When we do this, I think it's very important that we do this realistically and honestly, keeping in mind what we can afford financially, because what I don't want to see happen is all of a sudden we come in and everybody wants 10 more clerks, or 10 more this, or 10 more that. It should be honest, it should be fair, and it should certainly fit within our budget plan, because we only have so much money also. But I think it's an excellent idea that we look and take an honest assessment about what our staffing needs are.
Any further comments?
Yes.
Mr. Joseph?
I don't think we're in a financial position to add a full-time clerk to any one office at the expense of other offices. And I, for one, would be in favor of not cross-training, but looking at the possibility of hiring a staff that would be one half-time in what's determined to be the greatest need area, and the other half-time in the next highest need area. That actually is a half step that bodes well for the future in case there's a loss of staff in either one of those two areas. So that's another possibility that I'd like us to look at.
Town clerk?
I just want to remind you,
Sorry.
Danny, get her a chair.
Not even a please.
I can stand and
Please.
still be short.
She is
Thank
standing.
you. I just want to remind people of some recent instances where we were sharing offices, and when one person quits, for whatever reason, then 2 offices are down.
Yep.
And we have to retrain 2 offices, or when that one person is sick. It just, it
Yeah, I'm not
sounds good in
suggesting that we
theory.
share. I'm not suggesting sharing cross-training. I'm talking about an additional half-time in one and a half-time in another. If it
2
will-
separate people?
Could be, sure. Doesn't have to be one.
Okay.
Yep.
Because that would be my concern. And,
Yep.
I understand that we have to be conscious of our budget, but you really also have to be conscious of the workload that you're piling up on one individual.
Yeah, and
I
that's what-
know we're public servants, but, we're also
Yeah.
human.
And that's why I think that having that flexibility and advice and prioritizing somehow, Greg, and I don't know what you'd use for criteria, but somehow prioritizing that based on workload, this is the greatest need, this is the second biggest need, this is the third. And I mean, that document alone will help us for future planning beyond this year. I just don't know what criteria you would set, and I don't know how to do that.
I hadn't thought about it until now, so I will think about it and provide you with an outline in terms of what my thoughts are.
Okay.
So we have motion and second. Any further discussion?
Just one thing to add,
Town clerk?
because I'm Irish.
And I have one.
And then she has one. But maybe instead of Friday, if you want to be open 5 days a week, some of the part-time offices don't open till noon on Thursday. Maybe the full-time people could be working behind closed doors until noon and then be open from noon to 7 in the evening to service the
I'd
public.
like to see that kind of thing brought up and discussed with Greg as you begin to set a comprehensive plan.
I know a partial solution. Joanne, how long have you been going off the Board of Selectmen?
How long have I been gone?
Off of the board?
Probably about 5 years.
Okay, so back about 5 years ago, the board voted to institute the senior work-off program.
I don't know what happened to that. I love that idea.
Nothing ever happened. I would be thrilled to have a senior
Vote for another.
in my
Came forward.
office above and beyond somebody else, because it's a body answering the phone. It's a senior helping a senior on the other side of the counter. And I mean, granted, there will only be, I think it came out to like 62 hours for the year, and they earn up to $500 off their real estate taxes.
How much?
I think it's 500.
Yeah, I think we did research, I'm sorry.
No, we passed it.
Yeah,
the
we
policy.
passed it, we did research.
They went to town meeting. I got you all the packets on all the different towns that did it. I did a bunch of research for everybody. You voted on it at town meeting. And I told all the seniors about it, and still to this day, they're asking me about it, and the Board of Selectmen never did anything after that. So I don't know what happened.
Yeah, we even set an hourly rate, and we set a maximum, which I thought was low, by the way.
Law, though.
If,
It's by law.
no, not by law. No, because other
I
towns,
think it's by town.
yeah, it varied by town. But I'd love to see us resurrect that.
I mean, on top of that, you figure, even if you tried it out for the first year with 2 seniors, you're talking $1,000. The grand scheme of our whole budgets, what's $1,000 to pay out, to help out a senior and to help out, I guess they would be like a floater. They could be like a
Yeah,
floater.
I'd love to see
Or they
that.
could be for one particular office, and then boost up the rest of the help, and give a few more hours to the departments that need it, you know, the few we mentioned tonight, and have the seniors.
Mr. Chairman,
It's
let
not
me
a lot of money.
Yeah, let me suggest, we don't need to vote on that.
We still have to vote on the other vote first. So.
All right. However, a vote by a previous Board of Selectmen is not binding on this board, but if you were to instruct the town administrator to look into that, and just to see what the parameters were.
Sorry, Greg.
And to come up with his suggestion.
I was going to jump in. I've done it, and it is a lot of work. It will require a lot of work of a staff person to match up all those people with needs in specific offices. And I think that's probably the reason why it didn't get implemented, is someone looked at the amount of work that's necessary to job match someone's skill with an office that is looking for a particular person.
One of the things we could do, though, is to limit it just to the assessor's office for this year, or just to 2 people total.
Pilot.
Yeah, just as a pilot. I would not want to make it that much of a burden until we found out if it was worth it.
Right, and we'd have to include the money in the overlay, just so you know. That's how you pay for it.
I find it difficult to believe that Warren, Mass. Can institute this sooner than we can.
Yeah.
It can't be brain surgery here to get it done. And I think we need to move it forward. There's a lot of people who have great backgrounds, who it is not all about the money, it's about commitment to their community. It's about keeping busy, and they have a lot of skills that they can bring to the table that would certainly make other people's jobs easier within this town hall.
I'm going to push the other vote forward. Let's get that off the table.
Which one is that?
Did we take a vote on?
We took a vote on John, we didn't
we
take a
didn't
vote
take
on
on
John
John's.
Hussey's.
We had
We did on yours, but not John's.
Yep.
So I want to take a vote on that to get it off the table. Any further discussion on the staffing plan? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Unanimous. And I'm going to state for the record, because I know she'll never state for the record. If we're going to be looking at everybody, I hope we look in our office. Michelle does administrative assistant to the administrator, to the selectmen, to the Christmas party,
FAA, capital
FAA,
improvement.
previous administrator.
Cemetery,
But the previous administrator pushed some
Yep.
job responsibilities on Michelle, which requires her to give up some time. I know you understand she gets comp time down the road, but I never thought that was fair. So I think we need to prioritize all the departments and all the offices, because I believe also that we're one of the few towns that has one administrative assistant in their office. Most have 2, one for the selectman and one for the administrator. That's really fair, and I want that up front.
Yep, no problem there.
Thank you, ladies. Nice to see you again, Joanne.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Motion to adjourn. No, I'm just kidding.
Mr. Chairman.
So,
Next up, 7B, Highway Department, awarding the construction bid materials for 2016. Mr. Guyon with his multicolored chart. And
Mr. Chairman, I guess it was about probably 2 weeks ago, the town administrator and I opened bids for the various road construction materials and services for the calendar year of 2016. The results of that bid are on a spreadsheet I provided to the board. My recommendations are highlighted in the red. They are all low bidders, with the exception of number 8, which is the center line striping for the roadways. I wasn't happy with the company this year. There's a lot of wavy lines out there. They've had the bid in the past and have done a decent job, but for some reason this year, it's not that good. The only other bidder is Markings Incorporated. They had the bid for the town of Dudley several years ago, and they did a fantastic job. As a matter of fact, I had them do the section of Oxford Ave that we paved this year, because they were doing the West Main Street center line during the road construction. I had them shoot down there one night and do that road after we paved. The difference in price for the second place bidder for that is 0.3 of a cent per foot. And in the overall scheme of things, with all the line striping we do, it's an increase of about $500 a year, but I think it's well worth it, as I say, compared to the lines we had put down this year.
Mr. Administrator, we're not obligated to take the low bidder, right?
No, if we determine, Dan and I had a discussion, we're obligated to award to the lowest responsible and eligible bidder. If the highway superintendent's recommendation is that someone did poor performance, to preserve public monies, we have a right and an obligation to go with the next bidder. And we will make that as an award in our condition.
Okay, and all these materials that are listed, every department is supposed to use the vendor that we choose, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, as a matter of fact, the note, I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman, but the notice in the paper says bids for the town of Dudley. It doesn't say bids for the highway department.
Correct. So, for example, we adopt this policy tonight. The water sewer people are notified who they're supposed to use, and it comes off the list that we approve.
That's right. We'll provide them with a copy of the bid list.
If anybody has any questions for Mr. Guyan, I'll entertain them at this time. Mr. Joseph.
Danny, I don't, under number 8, I only see one bid.
Should be two names there, Markings Incorporated and Highway Safety.
All right, Highway Safety is who we had.
Yeah.
Markings, Inc., but which of them is no increase from this year? Highway Safety or Markings, Inc.?
Yeah. It'd be Highway Safety. It's the same bid as last year.
Okay, so it is an increase
Yep.
for Markings, Inc. for both white and yellow,
Yes.
but it's marginal.
It's 0.3 of a cent per foot.
Okay. All right. How much is that a mile? Quickly. Never mind. Okay.
Danny, under coal patch plant, it says no bid, and it says increase of 3. Does that mean that's because you want to go in mass broken stone? Number 2?
Number 2, yeah, we can go to the next lowest bidder, whatever's available. We don't really go over the limit where you need that amount of money for coal patch. I think the bid is $15,000. We don't spend $15,000 for coal patch.
Do we use a lot of it, though? Jan?
Excuse me?
Don't we use a lot of
Oh,
that?
probably about $5,000.
So you want to go with mass broken stone on that one?
I would leave that open to who's ever closest.
Oh, your discretion,
For spot buy?
Yeah.
as
if you need
needed?
it?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's smart.
Okay,
Price of oil's going down.
good thing. Any other questions for the
Yes.
superintendent? Mr. Joseph?
If we make a motion to accept these as recommended, I think we should also include in the motion that all highway department, that all town departments, including the enterprises, are expected to adhere to these bids as we award them, number 1. And number 2, that if the awarding of a coal patch contract goes out, that it goes to the low bidder, or that reasons be given why. Because the nearest one is, I think, $20 a ton, or $10 a ton more.
There is also a variation in the coal patch, the material which is
That's
how it's
fine.
made.
That's fine. As long as, if we're not going to go with low bidder, you've given us a real good reason why the one case, number 8, we don't go with low bidder. And I think it's as transparent as we can possibly be if that kind of language is included in the motion, so that we continue to be as transparent as possible.
Yes. So the issue would be, though, hypothetically, I guess, if the enterprise fund needed coal patch and they ordered it, would they be able to order it without going through Greg or Danny, I guess? Then they come back and they say...
No. If we approve these as recommended, that means that there's no bid accepted at this time for coal patch, and that would have to be brought to us. And you know what, Dan? This is not being sticky or picayune. This is to protect everybody, you, the board, the town, absolutely positively.
Yep.
How fast is turnaround time, Danny, if somebody needs coal patch? Generally, they don't
Same day.
just go get it?
Yeah. A lot of times, if we're going to send a truck for coal patch, we'll send 2. If the water department's tied up, we'll bring them a load back bill to them.
Okay, so,
Mr. Massey?
thank you. To that point, and so is town administrator is the chief procurement officer, so to Paul's point, if one of the enterprises, do they usually come to you to order it, but yet?
Well, they
if
usually
it's-
ask us who we're getting it from,
Okay.
and they'll make the phone call and either go get it themselves, or if we're sending the truck down, we'll send two and bring them back
Okay.
one if they're tied up.
All right,
But
You
we
bill-
stay in
so
contact.
there's a
with them.
process there.
And they
okay.
pay the bill?
Yeah, one load is billed to them, one load is billed to us.
We absorb the delivery charge?
Yeah.
Hey, it's on there, delivery charges
I
on
know,
all these
I know.
things.
Could I ask one question?
Mr. Joseph?
Dan, you said that there's differences in coal patch. Does that mean that some of these bids are for different quality of coal patch?
I guess a lot of companies, it depends how they make it, the amount of oil in it, how sticky it is.
Yeah.
In the wintertime, we want to get like a real sticky material.
Do we vary the composition or quality of the coal patch that we order based on particular times of the year?
You can, basically, but we try to get the stickiest stuff possible. And-
Okay.
and so it stays, it
Okay,
doesn't
that
pound out.
helps me
with the-
understand it.
Yep.
All right.
Any further questions for the superintendent or the administrator? Hearing none. All in favor of accepting the bid package as presented, including no bid for
Question?
burn plant coal
We have a mo-
patch?
Are you making a motion?
Actually, so moved on Paul's motion.
Okay,
That was just entertaining.
so is there a second?
Second.
Motion made and second. Any further discussion or questions? Hearing none, all in favor, state aye.
Aye.
Unanimous.
Good work. That's good. A lot of decreases on here, too.
Danny, I didn't know the printer, I didn't know the
prices.
printer
Yeah, right.
printed purple and yellow.
That's done
I
by.
saw that.
That's
Usually
done
it's
on
red-
purpose.
Usually it's red and green.
It's Christmas time. Christmas is over.
Christmas time.
You did that, Michelle?
Yeah, Christmas came a little late.
So's the purple and yellow,
The
that's
Grinch, the Grinch came a little late to Minnesota this year.
yeah, the purple and yellow's over, too, though. Oops.
Next up, we have a first reading for the betterment policy on private roads.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like
Valakunas.
to ask that the matter be tabled. Based upon my research, it appears that we need to have a bylaw versus a policy. I went and I looked at what other communities have done, and it appears as though the majority of towns have either created a special act or they've created a bylaw which determines how we'll deal with road betterments, which is, for those who may be listening at home, is if there's a private road that someone wants to see improved, a batch of residents or a group of residents want to see their street repaved, the town would have an opportunity to go to town meeting, vote the project. The project would be approved on the basis of assignment of betterments. And in order to do that, I suggest that we need to have a town meeting bylaw established. I'm happy to put that together, but I don't feel that a policy does us any good.
So you want to table it to the next
Yeah.
meeting?
Yeah, I think that's reasonable, but understand that I have to come back with you and make a recommendation on creation of a bylaw.
Although he can't make a motion to table is non-negotiable.
You can just simply declare it tabled without objection, but remember that the board's policy has been
Next meeting.
that if it's tabled, it is now on the next meeting's agenda,
That's fine.
Is that okay?
okay?
That's fine.
All right, declare it tabled.
Yeah.
Next up, mileage reimbursement increase from 49 cents a mile to 54 cents per mile for IRS mileage rates. Is this a presentation from the accountant or?
No, there's information in your packet, Mr. Chairman, that just a matter of a vote of the board, and this is the first time that I can recall that the mileage rate is actually going down. So I suggest you so approve it.
You said it's going down?
Gas prices are going
I did say that.
Oh, okay, yep.
I did state that. If you refer to the document that's in the packet,
Yep.
it states that the rate is going down.
Oh, from 57 to 54?
Yep.
When's the last time it went up, Mr. Valakunas?
Year before that.
Goes up every year.
Right, I'm thoroughly confused.
We have
I'm thoroughly
we have an
confused.
IRS chart.
We have an IRS chart that says that the rate is going down.
It was 56 cents in 14, 57.5 in 15, and this year it's set at 54 cents.
The agenda says from .490 mile to
Well,
That's for
the town's rate is 49, yeah, we're reading off the IRS table.
Okay, so we're looking to raise the town rate.
Can you come up to the table, please?
Yes, sure.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, I'm thoroughly confused.
So is the intent then to move up the town rate to the IRS recommended rate?
Yes.
I frankly would have to question that. I mean, CNBC, I think today, reported that oil was at less than $31 change per barrel, the lowest in 12 years. You know, if you look at what the price of gas is, and you don't have to go to Southbridge to see it reflected, it's going down and going down significantly year over year. I don't know where the IRS is coming up with its numbers, other than those are probably the same numbers that they came up with that reflected no increase for Social Security last year.
One second, Mr. Massey.
Well, it's not just gas, right? It's
I
also wear and
understand
tear
it's
of the
depreciation, it's
vehicle.
insurance, and a whole host of
Wear and
things.
tear,
But
yeah.
gas is a
Yeah,
significant
no, you agree.
part.
I agree. That's why I think they're going down.
And I think for most people, year over year, the population in terms of cars or vehicles on the road are realizing better gas mileage as we, move along by federal mandate. So at some point, the individual driver should be realizing a benefit as well, aside from the fact that the per gallon price at the pump has gone down.
Well, the difference is we lock our price in. I don't think we get a floating price, Danny. We lock it in and we're stuck, right? Danny? Yeah, who purchases the gas?
That's not the treasurer's office.
Rich, can you come up for a minute?
Camera's eyes rolling from here.
Mr. Chairman, just so I'm clear, under no circumstances am I recommending the rate go up. If that's what the documents in front of you imply, I would not support that.
Rich, do we, when we lock our gas price in annually, do we get a floating rate? Does it go down? Or are we stuck where we're at?
We have the option, not to belabor the point and bring this out 10 minutes beyond where it should end. This is for mileage reimbursement. Nobody fills their tank and gets reimbursed from the town of Dudley.
Well, my question was going to be, would it be better for, how much do we spend a year on gas reimbursement? Or would it be better to,
No. We want to ask a different question. In my opinion, the IRS is doing their best to come up with that rate. If the rate is going down, the best bean counters in Washington are the ones who are determining that. I think it's wise that the board agree with it. I would not suggest that any gasoline purchased by the municipality to use in municipality-owned vehicles go into a private vehicle. Then we start to run into another issue because we buy a tax stamp so that we can do just that for municipal vehicles only. So we don't really want to start messing with anything like
right? Well, Greg, how much do we reimburse, on an annual basis to people for?
I'd have to do some research, Sally. I don't want to just throw a number out there. It's not much.
Mr. Chairman?
Your recommendation is not to go up?
No, there's no way I could ever recommend it. Based upon what I saw, and there's 3 pages of memos included here, which are equally all confusing as far as I'm concerned. I would ask that there be no action taken by the board at this meeting, unless the recommendation is that the rate go down. I don't support anything that would result in the rate going up in view of gas prices being at historically low averages.
Right. Mr. Joseph?
Yeah, I'm just looking at the rate, the IRS rate for the past 5 years on that chart. And I will tell you that the company that I consult for out of Colorado, I've never gotten this amount. I've always gotten more than this. I think the IRS tries to take in the highs and the lows. And even though we're on the low, if we don't have any complaints about it at this point, and with the gas prices going down, and God knows we can't keep changing the rate every time they go up and down, I'm going to move that this be rejected at this time. Any increase be rejected, period.
I'm not going to take a second until Mr. Massey had a comment.
Well, I'm just curious. We do try to line ourselves up. I'm not saying anything for or against here. We try to line ourselves up for IRS policies in other areas. Are we obligated, Greg, to do that?
No.
Or we can set whatever we want?
No.
No, we're not
No, there are many
obligated.
towns that don't pay the
Okay,
IRS rate.
so we, okay. This is all I've known because
Remember, the employee always has the option at the end of the year when they do their taxes and filling the gap.
Oh, okay.
That's an unreimbursed expense.
Correct.
Got it.
As long as they can document it, they can take the incremental difference.
Because with I'm driving to New Jersey tomorrow, and I'll get mileage at that rate.
$13 a mile.
And someone's probably driving. Mr. Fox?
The both of you.
Am I correct, the current rate today is .49?
That's the
Yeah.
town's rate, yes.
That's the town's rate?
Yeah,
Yes.
So we can keep it at .49?
I would
We can do whatever we
propose
want.
that we do that.
Right.
Then I'll make a motion that we keep that rate.
I will withdraw my motion.
Mr. Fox?
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion that we keep the mileage rate at .49 as it exists today.
Second.
Motion made and second. Any further?
9 cents per mile.
Per mile.
Okay.
Motion made and seconded. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, state aye.
Aye.
Unanimous. 7E, municipal expenses, proper public purpose procedure policy, say that 5 times fast.
Well, this one's, Mr. Chairman, if you'd allow me to address this, the Department of Revenue sent some guidelines out to all cities and towns stating that communities should adopt what's considered to be a proper public expense as part of their policies. And I want to thank the town accountant who took the first effort in drafting this. I went through it and reviewed it, made a couple of changes. But the policy that you see here parallels almost its entirety the guidelines that the state asks us to follow. You look at these, and most of these seem to make sense, that you wouldn't want to have it documented in writing. However, I've been in situations where it's always helpful to have it in writing and have a vote of the board that stands behind it, which basically addresses what we pay and what we don't pay.
So Greg, if we adopt this, it'd be placed within our town bylaws?
It would, no, board policies.
Board policies.
This would be a board policy.
Mr. Massey?
So board policies, Greg, and as you as chief procurement officer, I mean, these are what you'd follow
Absolutely.
for expenditure.
And the town accountant would follow it also, so
town
that if
accountant.
someone submitted an expense that was considered to be ineligible, there'd be no reimbursement allowed.
Got it.
I think this helps her do her job.
Yep, makes things clear.
Just remember that if we do this as a board policy, it's only in effect until next June's elections. We cannot obligate a future board to a policy. They would have to readopt it each year. Policies are only for the life of the board until there's another election.
Really, Greg?
That's what we've always done.
We haven't reaffirmed policies every
Yeah.
time.
If it's a board policy that we're voting on, just as a policy, it's only committed to by this board. Future boards can change it, and will change it, or can reaffirm it.
So every policy that we approve has to come up next year?
Unless it's, no, it doesn't. But if it's challenged, or if they want to change it, they just simply go ahead and change it by vote. Simple majority vote.
So
So it's valid until it's not. Is that what you're saying, Paul?
Say again?
So it's valid until somebody doesn't
Until
want it.
somebody changes it.
So things like the yard sale and the speed bumps, those
Yep.
continue forward unless somebody says, I don't like
Unless
it.
someone,
Wants to change it.
unless a future board wants to change it, a comma or a dot or anything else.
That's fine.
Chair will entertain a motion to accept the Town of Dudley. Mr. Massey.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we accept the Town of Dudley municipal expenses for proper public purpose procedure written up by the town administrator, as written.
Second.
Motion made in second. Any further discussion?
Yeah, I would ask that the mover add, in accordance with Section 5, Mass General Law, Chapter 40.
Yep.
No objection.
No, okay. Let's
With
add
no
that.
objection. Any further questions or comments? Hearing none, all in favor, state aye.
Aye.
Unanimous.
Okay.
7F, budget kickoff, Mr. Balkunas.
Does everyone have a copy of the document that's up on the table that says handouts? Be helpful if you don't have it to get one.
Is it this, Greg?
It is. So the title says, Welcome to the Budget Kickoff Session, Town of Dudley, January 11th, 2016. And this is for the fiscal year, which is our fiscal year 2017, which is July through June of 2017. So this is typically the time that the town and all cities and towns begin planning for their next fiscal year. And I want to thank the department heads and staff who are here today and the members of the FAA, all who took time out of their schedule and are missing the bachelor to be here this evening for us. The budget at this time primarily focuses on the revenue side. We're 4.5 months before the annual town meeting, and expense funding requests are due in from departments on January 22nd. I think you heard here this evening, Dudley does more with less than most towns that you'll experience, and I can say, based upon 33 years of working in Massachusetts communities, that statement is true. And it's a testament to the budget process that's in place, the work of the department heads who have submitted realistic funding requests that address only critical needs. I do want to mention, before we start talking about what's in here, is this is really the first step in the budget process, which is the budget development. The second step in the budget process is the Board of Selectmen and the FAA voting their budget recommendations, and I'll get into the dates. The third step in the budget process is approval of town meeting in May of the town's operating budget. And then the final step in the budget process concludes in November with the setting of the town's tax rate. So I've often heard people say, why does the town pick such a high tax rate? And the tax rate is really the end. It's the math at the end that starts with the development of the budget. So setting of the tax rate is a mathematical calculation based upon what the town decides it wants to spend. So you can see that it's almost a 12-month process from beginning to end. Just a quick summary of how we look through the end of December. That's our 6-month time period. And if you look at our overall revenues, we're at about 55% collected, so we're a little bit above what you would normally expect. And there's a major hole in collections with motor vehicle excise taxes. So if you look at the revenue sources that we have, and there are literally 100 different accounts that the town collects revenue on. One of the larger ones is motor vehicle excise tax, and typically that revenue comes in the time frame of February and March. So the fact that we're at 55% and one of the largest revenue sources is due in February and March makes me feel better that we're meeting our projections for this fiscal year. And it's important to note that at the beginning of the budget processes, how are we doing today on our revenues? I want to turn the page. The key dates for the budget. So the budgets are due into the Board of Selectmen's office on January 22nd, and the departments have already started submitting those to the board. January 25th to the 13th, the administrator will be meeting with departments to review budget proposals. On February 22nd, I'll submit my preliminary budget to the Selectmen and the FAA, and then you'll begin your joint meetings with the FAA February 29th through March 22nd. The most important date is April 26th, which is the last date for you to vote your budget recommendations. Annual town meeting is on May 23rd, and annual town election is on June 13th. They seem like they're a long ways off, and they are. Next page, 2017 budget goals. These are similar, if you remember how we looked at this last year. These are pretty similar to what we had for budget goals with a couple of changes for 2017. And I think they're broad and general, that, you know, we want to base our budget, number one, on conservative revenue assumptions. That's the hallmark of any municipal budget, is not to overestimate revenues. Many of the problems that you read about in other towns is where a town has gotten away from that, and they've been overly generous or overly optimistic in terms of what their revenues are going to be. And this is the same practice that Governor Baker and his experts on the state use when they develop the state budget. We also want to promote transparency in the budget process. We want people to see what we have. We want to disclose our revenue information. We want people to understand what it is and see that there are no secrets in how we develop the town's budget. Thirdly, we want to continue to build critical reserves and lessen the draw on free cash in the stabilization fund. And I would mention that, those are lofty goals that take time to achieve. We want to maintain an affordable health insurance plan and employee benefits, and I want to commend the town for doing so. Health insurance has become a real hot-button issue in many towns, and Dudley offers its employees and its retirees what I consider to be a very cost-effective plan and a generous plan, which generally those two things don't go together, but in this instance, the town's participation in the Franklin Community Government Plan does offer us that opportunity. We want to continue to develop alternative revenue sources, as we've done in the past, to lessen the burden on taxpayers. We want to look at a dedicated funding source for capital expenses. Although capital is not part of the budget that we're talking about this evening, we did have an evening meeting earlier tonight with the members of the Capital Improvement Committee, and capital is something that we cannot ignore because capital requires significant monetary investment from the town. We want to continue to foster cooperation between the town and the schools, and I want to thank my colleagues up at Shepherd Hill and the Dudley Regional School District who have reached out to us in the past. And then we want to do everything we possibly can to maintain Dudley's low tax rate, and we want to minimize cost to taxpayers. One of the great things about this town is done a really good job in terms of managing the impact to taxpayers. And that will come out elsewhere in the presentation. So just a couple of things on this page that I jotted down. The governor's budget is due out in about a week and a half, and as part of the governor's budget, we can expect that there'll be a revenue proposal that'll come out. And we will wait for that number before we make any additional reactions and adjustment to our revenue plan. The next page is a chart that shows how we've applied our revenue for this year. And it remains to be seen how we'll apply our revenue for fiscal year 2017. However, I think it's pretty indicative of this is how the town would spend its money and how the town continues to spend its money. And you can see a majority of the costs are in two categories: education or schools, which represent 51%, and fixed costs or municipal costs, which represent 41%. I want to make a notation that within that 41% cost of the town is the town's salary budget. So keep in mind that we like to think of salaries as being fixed, but we all know that they're subject to change. And there's approximately $3.3 million within that number that's attributable to municipal employee salaries. That's within that figure. We've also put in outside education. You might scratch your head and say, what's that little 1% slice that's there? That's the out-of-district regional vocational education, which is getting its own category this year. So as children from the Dudley school system go to out-of-district vocational schools, we pay that cost. And right now it costs us...
And transportation.
Transportation and tuition.
Yeah.
And this is the cost of 4 students.
And that's borne by the town side.
That is borne by the town side of the budget, which means the town side of the budget has to pay it before it pays any other bills.
Although they're considered students, we still take the cost.
They are considered students, but the law says that the cost comes back to the municipal side of government.
That was my question. I wasn't familiar with that, because that sounds kind of odd with school, instead of that piece, and maybe it sounds odd that both the transportation and the administrative side comes out of the town budget as opposed to the school budget, because they're getting reimbursement from the state for education and so forth.
Yeah, Alan, I know Mr. Jankowski, who sat as a TA before me, fought this vigorously, and I've questioned it also. It just seems to be a lot of money for 4 students. And I'm not questioning I'm not questioning it, that's what the law requires us to do, but it seems to be a very large number when you consider it in comparison to the other costs that the town has to bear.
Yeah, but accepting,
Alan, come on up if we're going to do a discussion, please. Thank you.
but it wasn't the actual amount, although it is high, I think, too. It's that where it comes out of the town budget as opposed to out of the school side of the budget. That's what confuses me.
Right.
Now, a couple questions.
Why is this, excuse me, why is this this person's behavior different than all the other people?
Right.
All the other students in the rest of the town?
Because it's Chapter 73, or Chapter 71 or Chapter 73 of the Mass General Law. There's specific language in the law that states that the cost is borne by the town. And I actually asked town council for a legal opinion on it because I was unclear. There's other contradictory language that appears as though the school district would be responsible for these costs. But unfortunately, the legal opinion came back and council said, no, Greg, you're wrong. It's the town that's responsible.
And we actually appealed it three
did.
years ago with Mr. Yang. We took it right to the Commission of Education, and
I remember there was some
it was ruled against us.
But the concern that I have is the number of students that are electing to go in these out-of-district programs is increasing. So when Ballyconus began here a year and a half ago, I believe there was 1 student. And now we have 4 students. In a year from now, do we have 8 students?
Well, there was a push on, too, at the state level. I think John was chairman. We asked our delegation to look into changing that law, and there was a little bit of momentum at one point, but then it kind of died out because we lost our sponsors.
Mr. Chairman, it died out because we were waiting, well, I don't want to get on my soapbox too much, so I won't. The bottom line is that since 1993, we've been due a review of the Education Reform Act since 1993. Every year, the powers that be in Boston have pushed it off so that they didn't have to perform that review. The 800-pound gorilla in the room was that we knew the formula didn't work. So now that we actually have proof positive of a bipartisan commission of municipal elected officials, state elected officials, and economists, now they've published their results, and the formula doesn't work. Unfunded mandates are not taken into consideration with the formula. Yeah, it's completely outdated. So the bottom line is that we waited to move forward on it until that report was finished, because this board was not going to be as powerful of a voice as that report was going to be.
Right. Mr. Fox?
Greg, I believe you found a alternative school that is cheaper than some of the schools the kids are going to today? Was it UMass? There was a second school that offered similar programs, but at a cheaper cost.
It depends on what program the child is studying. If the child wants to study agricultural or a program associated with animals, they have to go to the Norfolk County Agricultural School.
Yeah, the only one.
Which is located in Walpole, and I venture to say it's probably an hour in each direction. And we have 2 students from Dudley that attend the Norfolk County Agricultural School. We have 1 student that attends Tantascwa, which is at a fairly low cost. And we have a 4th student that attends the Assabet Regional School in Marlborough, which is not close, nor are they cheap. We do not negotiate the tuition rates. What we basically do is the accountant receives a bill, and we pay the bill.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Joseph?
If we move this, Alan, if we move this over to school budget, it would still cost the money, the same amount of money.
Come get it.
All right? The only exception might be there might be some transportation funds that could be allocated to it. The question that I have is, and I have a suggestion also, but the question I have, Mr. Chairman, is if the town administrator can tell us if the rate that we are charged per student is the same as that vocational school's in-district cost, or is it more?
It's more.
It's more.
Okay.
Substantially.
So That's what I suspected. So my suggestion is that we petition our state senator, that this board petition by letter, our state senator and our state representative, and ask them to file legislation that would reduce the cost to an out-of-district school to the same as an in-district town would pay to that school system. And I'm actually making that as a form of a motion. And I'm going to tell you why. I can't imagine where there's extra work required of a school to process one of our kids, 4 kids at Norfolk, or our 8 kids at Assabet, and God knows why the hell they're going to Tantasco. I didn't realize that was a vocational school, all right?
Part of it is.
Than what it would cost them to process one of their own kids, to teach that kid, to instruct that kid. So why should we pay more? Is it a penalty for not having a particular curriculum in our area?
Second.
That's my motion.
Second.
Motion made and seconded to petition our delegation.
Maybe we can have them come in here.
Maybe we can have one of them come in and even explain to us if they have the answer.
Or both.
Both. I'm both. They're due to come in anyway.
You got the poll. Motion made and seconded. Or? Got to come up. Can't hear you. Sit closer.
I'm going to ask for an exception to the agenda when she's at the desk for a reason.
I was just curious, is there a maximum number of students, or does it just grow? I mean, is
It
there a
can just
limit,
grow.
like only 10? It just...
They can grow. We have no control over it.
So if
Do
20
we
kids
have
show up-
students from outside the district that attend our schools, or is it just... So,
Generally, it's vocational, and it's generally...
School choice.
No, that's different.
No, that's different.
School choices.
The other one is vocational, and they choose something that's not offered at Bay Path. It's offered somewhere else. That's why they go there. Like one of the girls, young lady, was doing large animal veterinarian, and they didn't have
Right.
that around here. The only place that had it was Norfolk.
okay, so is somebody from out of town coming to Bay Path, for instance? Do we know
We'd
that?
have to ask Bay Path.
School charter.
That's school choice.
School
That's
choice.
different, though.
So we don't know if there's out of district children coming to our school district?
Right, for a specific program, I don't know the
There is
answer.
in Dudley at the high school level, not the I'm not sure about the vocation.
At the
I
high
would
school
assume
level.
there is.
So when these,
Yeah, but
when
school
these
choice is
other
different.
communities pay their money, does it go to the school, or does it
Goes to
come?
the school. And it's
That's school
actually
choice.
slightly profitable.
It's different. It's school choice.
School choice is
Yeah, they're
highly
two separate,
profitable.
yeah.
Right, it's two separate things.
two separate
Yeah,
programs.
this is strictly for vocational districts.
Vocational,
So the law is for vocational schools.
okay.
And by the way, this is in no means, has anything to do with Bay Path, which runs a great program, so I don't
Oh,
want to make it
No,
sound...
absolutely.
I think your
But-
example just
but
was.
Program that
but
they have.
I did testify, I did go to a meeting in November in Springfield, and I testified on this issue when the governor did a meeting on wanting to know what issues were plaguing cities and towns. And I addressed this, and we did a survey of what programs are offered. And there are programs like biosciences, biomedical engineering,
Aviation.
forensic science. So the vocational schools, to their credit, are very sharp in terms of tailor-making programs that are attractive to high school students.
Motion made in a second.
Or, could you hang on for a second, please? I'll wait to the vote.
Any further discussion on Mr. Joseph's motion? Hearing none, all in favor, state aye.
Aye.
Unanimous. Mr. Joseph.
Yeah, could I ask for a brief exception from the agenda? Or do we have an important voter registration deadline coming up fairly soon?
Well,
When's our next one?
I'd have to count backwards. I just wrote them down today, too. The presidential primary is March 1st.
Yep.
And the deadline to register to vote would be 20 days prior to that.
20
days prior to March 1st.
20 days
so
prior to March
1st.
1st, so...
Are those working days or calendar days?
Calendar.
Because it's leap year this year, so you picked up a day.
Calendar.
So could I just ask, Mr. Chairman, if Rory could tell us, give us a broad idea of the date without being held to it, and let people know what they have to do to register and vote, because we've got a fairly good number of new people in town.
We do. Actually, I think, the calendar's going to be on the website, for one thing,
Okay.
because we have a presidential primary March 1st. Of course, we have the town meeting May 23rd. We have our own annual town election on June 13th. We have a state primary on September 8th. And then I believe the presidential election, which is the state election, is on November 2nd. So it is a huge year. There are many ways to register. You can come into my office. You can get a mail-in registration. There is now online registration, and I've got that link on our webpage where it will take you right to the Secretary of State's website, and you can register online. There are people who register at the Registry of Motor Vehicles or different state agencies. There's all kinds of way to register, and there's no excuse not to. And actually this year, beginning with the presidential election, the state is implementing early voting, which is something very different from absentee voting, because there's only like 3 reasons supposedly that you can absentee vote. One is, if you're ill or homebound, or if you're going to be out of town or out of state, military, that kind of thing. Early voting is for everybody, and my office is going to need to be available for that 10 days prior to the election. So anybody, hundreds of people can come into my office to
Okay,
vote.
so if anybody is ardent about supporting a candidate in the presidential primary, you got to get it done 20 days prior to March 1st. That's why I wanted to bring that up, make sure people knew. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
And the registration deadline is always 8 o'clock in the evening.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks, Maura.
Mr. Joseph and Town Clerk. Greg, you want to continue your presentation, or have we synopsed it pretty good?
No, actually, that was, I want to just move on to the revenue plan and 2017 revenue plan. So this is the, these are kind of the numbers, how they lay out, and if you look at the column for 2017, there is one change. The first number in the right-hand column should be $2,268,910. So change the number from $9,166,410 to $2,268,910, and that's just a number that carried forward, and it was a mistake that we had made. But the assumptions that are made in the revenue plan is that's the growth in the town's tax levy, which is the prior year plus new growth plus 2.5%. So that's the amount of growth in the tax levy. The other changes that are made in here are state aid. There's assumption for a 2.5% increase in state aid to $1,864,000 even. And then local receipts, there's an assumption that that would increase by 2% to $2,573,158. And you can see what the impacts of the budget would be: 1% of $172,000, 2% $344,000, and 3% $517,000. Similar to a year ago, we have enough to do a very modest increase in our budget, in the order of 1% or 1.5%. That's again based upon the revenues that are available at this time. If you'd like to just flip the next page.
Greg, before you do that, Mr.
Yes,
Chairman,
sir.
what's the difference in the other financial sources column?
Yeah, so that's money that was from the unspent money from the schools. So there was unspent money from the schools in this year's, in the 2015 budget that we rolled and used in the 2016 budget. It's considered to be one-time, non-reoccurring revenue, and we do not have that revenue available for the next fiscal year.
And what about the incomes, potential incomes from the solar pilot agreements?
Not included in here. Once the permits are issued, then we'll adjust our revenues to accommodate those additional revenues.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Greg, and the other financial source that Mr. Joseph referred to was primarily Bay Path.
Yes, it was. Bay Path also turned back generous money to us last year.
Primarily Bay Path.
Thank you.
I had,
Mr. Marvel, Chairman FAA.
so I was, okay, I got kind of stuck in there. I wanted to do two
former
things.
chairman.
At this point, I want to do two things now.
Sorry, Kerry.
I see, Ora was talking about all the things that she has to do for the election process this year, and I just wanted to make a comment about that personally, not necessarily as a member of the FAA, but that I can see that's gonna be a lot of extra work on her part, and I was just wanting to, voice some support for her as far as getting some help for that goes. She hasn't lobbied me for that either, but I can see that it's gonna be. The other thing was, based on Greg's comment, you asked about the solar and possible revenue from that, and I think we've also got possible savings. As you know, I've been somewhat involved, and I saw some information in the paper about what Greg had mentioned, the possible combination of the DPW or uniting it with the soil water, and I think there's definitely some, and we'll be seeing some numbers from that eventually, before too long, I hope. Savings from that is an opportunity for the town to reduce, and that might not affect the town side of the budget as much as the savings in the water and sewer side, water and sewer, but either way, it's still bottom line to the town savings. I think that's an opportunity there. And so I wanted to be sure that we at least got that on the table. Good. Thanks.
Yep.
Thanks, Alan.
Thank you, folks. Mr. Bellicose.
I'm going to finish up as quick as I can here. Current reserves is just a summary of where we stand with our reserves, and I think as I've mentioned on the next page, is the goal is to grow the stabilization fund to $500,000. The balance as we stand today is $391,000. We want to also see our free cash grow. There was a total of $470,770 certified for this year. I'd like to see that amount grow. You may say why. The reason why is we want to try to improve the town's bond rating. And Dudley, for those of you who are interested, we're a AA3, which is on the low end of a AA category. And we're comparable to some of the other towns in the area, but we're higher than both Webster and Southbridge, which are both rated as single A rated. Next chart is just an analysis of how Dudley's tax rate has changed over a period of time. The values rise and fall in the long term as property valuations change. One of the things that I did find is that Dudley home values are equal to higher than they are in Leicester, Oxford, Spencer, and Southbridge. It's always interesting to see how we compare to other communities. And we're a little bit lower than Webster and Auburn, which are in the area, but we are higher than the communities that I did mention. And I've actually carried that forward into the next slide and given you an analysis of current year tax rates and how that translates into a single family tax bill. And you can see that Dudley has the lowest rate at $12.18 and also has the lowest average single family tax bill at $2,629, about $1.24 lower in the tax rate than our neighboring community of Charlton.
And Greg, just as an aside, you also presented us with some information which says we are in the 93rd percentile compared statewide. We are 317 out of 338 communities.
Yes.
So people that think we're overtaxed.
We are very thrifty.
And they think we're overtaxed.
Community.
With a Prop 2.5 override last year.
Community is, one thing the numbers tell you is that Dudley is extremely thrifty, and that's borne out by the numbers that are here, is that we spend money wisely, and we want to continue to try to spend money wisely. It's interesting when you look at this and you look at the average single home tax bill in communities like Sturbridge and Southbridge and Oxford, even Charlton and Auburn, they're all much higher than they are in Dudley. And that's, again, a testament to the town and what it's done over a period of time.
Favorable comparison in terms of family moving here.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So one thing that I wanted to conclude this presentation by, and then I want to ask if the department heads have specific requests that they want to alert you of. I think this is a good opportunity to hear from them. I'm not asking them to provide an analysis of their budget, but if there are certain things that when their budget is submitted they feel is important. As Laura had mentioned, her election is coming up, and 4 elections are coming up, and that's critically important to her. So I just did a real quick thing. It's called the SWOT, Strength, Weaknesses, Opportunities, Threats, and Trends, and I like to do this because it's, when you do an analysis of the town, and you kind of try to do some type of strategic planning, and a budget is really part of a town's strategic plan. What do you say that Dudley's strength is? Well, Dudley does more with less than most other towns, and contrary to what some of the locals believe, there is a positive and progressive outlook in this community, which is refreshingly rare in what you see in other towns that are somewhat cynical and skeptical about government in general. Our weaknesses is geography, and there's a town has a limited commercial and industrial growth potential. There's some things that we can do about it, but the fact that we don't have major highways that run through Dudley is really a challenge. And from a municipal department perspective, we're behind on our use of technology for other departments. Those things cost money, and that's why it's here as shown as a weakness. Opportunities for improving the capital planning process, as we talked about, and development of the Stevens Mill. Trends would be our fixed costs are increasing, and our regulatory compliance is a factor. And I can't emphasize these enough. The regulators, the IRS is asking the town to adopt different rates and changes in its policies all the time. We're trying to stay on top of the state in terms of providing stormwater management documentation. There are regulatory issues involving a number of the municipal dams that we own throughout the town. So we're clearly in the crosshairs of the regulators, as most cities and towns are. And these result in costs to the citizen and the taxpayer that unfortunately they don't see an improvement in services, and that does cause frustration. So I'd summarize by putting down threats. I mentioned about repairs to dams. I mentioned about vocational education. Adverse weather, we had a $83,000 snow deficit that we carried over into this year, and more. But I think in terms of Dudley kind of thinking about itself and thinking globally when it looks at putting the budget together, it's important for everyone to kind of think about what our strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, threats, and trends are. I kind of like the analysis, and you're free to add to it. And if you want to someday get involved in strategic planning, it's a good stepping off point. And I just want to thank the board, the department heads and staff, the FAA, and the Dudley residents who continue to support municipal operations. And I'll take any questions and leave it to you to discuss with departments in terms of what their needs would be.
Fascinating data.
Yes, very good.
Excellent, Frank.
Good presentation.
Absolutely.
Mr. Guyon.
One thing I'd like to have the board take into consideration, and the administrator too as well, is maybe this year possibly, if we could have put into an escrow account probably 50% of the money brought in by the recycling center, once it matches the town budget, once it's paid for itself.
What's the line items matched?
I think it's $135,000.
No, I'm saying, you're saying once that line item.
Once that line item is matched, if we could have anything that's over that, keep 50%. The reason being is that asphalted surface down there is going to need to be resurfaced. That building is starting to rot away in the backside. It's going to need some additional work. I'd probably like to side that and make the repairs on it, but there's certainly no money in the budget for that at this point in time, but it's going to have to be done sooner than later.
Danny, would you repeat the first part of your recommendation again, or request?
I'd like to see if the recycling center can have some kind of an escrow account set up, so once the money that's brought in by the users of that recycling center,
Yeah.
Once that budget is paid for by the fees collected, able to put at least 50% of that into an escrow account to make repairs on a building and possibly resurface that whole asphalted surface down there.
Mr. Chairman, Danny, can you, are you able to put together the last 3 or 4 years total of the difference between the cost to operate the recycling center and the revenue?
Sure.
That would be helpful.
You gave that to us at
In the
one time.
past,
I think
a few years ago we
myself
did that.
and the town accountant, we got those numbers.
I'm sorry, I missed that. What was the
He's asking
question?
for an analysis of the last 3 or 4 years of revenues
Revenue
generated,
versus-
offset
yeah.
by cost.
I think last year he turned back $28,000.
Yeah, as I recall, some people were trying to throw a monkey wrench into the operation of that facility and said it cost more to run than what it was making. And Danny said, no, that's not true. and he was able to produce data.
That would have been me, Mr. Johnson.
Well, then Jonathan was, Jonathan's monkey wrench was,
Always changed.
yeah, but that was,
When we want to
that data
support
was
the
helpful.
argument, we don't figure in all the costs. When we want to defeat the argument, we give an actual representation.
Yeah, if we could get that data again, the argument then was good, and it's still good.
Sounds good to me.
We can do that.
You know, I don't want to go backwards, but both of you are correct. Jonathan's correct, because I remember with the previous administrator, we started getting into workers' comp insurance, because the job was rated higher than this one and that one, and we took, I think Danny sat down with the accountant, and they came up with the highest possible figures, and we still generated a surplus, when all fees are considered.
But I just want to make the board aware that, I mean, eventually that's going to need to have some repairs to the building, and again, like I say, the asphalted surface down there.
Well, if that's something we're going to consider, we're going to need that data again.
Thank you, Danny. Any other department head like to speak at this time? From the library. Hello, Karen.
I'm Karen Wall, the library director. Going forward, I'd like to thank you for your support, first of all. I've been here 2.5 years, and over that 2.5 years, you've been very supportive of the library and sustained growth, and I hope to continue working along those lines going forward.
Well, you're earning it with the variety of programs and services that you're offering. That's the first time that I can ever remember us having that breadth of programs.
Thank you. Well, speaking of that, of note for FY17, the things I'm going to be looking for are primarily, I'd like to continue to grow the programming, but right now I'm handling all of the adult programming, and in addition to all my director duties, and it's getting to be a bit much, so I'm hoping to add at least a part-time adult programming librarian if possible. And I'd also like to make sure that my current staff salaries are brought more in line with their counterparts in the comparative communities that Greg used when some salaries were adjusted within the town this past year. So they're very low, so I'm using the same methodology. And I'm also going to be pulling together the numbers for reopening on Saturdays.
For what?
For reopening the library on Saturdays, because I think we really need to do that.
Could I?
Mr. Joseph?
Besides URI, which has a substantial program, Masters in Library Science, are there other colleges in the area that have either bachelor's or master's programs that we could become a center for internships for library science people to help with the programming? I'm not sure it's a full-time job, but it might be neat to have a new, young, into the field kind of regular flow of people, and it would also obviously help them in terms of their resumes.
Mm-hmm. Yes, sure. Simmons College in Boston offers.
Simmons, yep.
Yeah. URI and Simmons are really the only two games in town.
Yep.
I think the Connecticut college that offered
That's
a
a ways.
master's. Yeah, I don't think they're accredited anymore. So.
Okay.
But yes, those are considered paid internships.
Yep.
It's certainly less money than hiring a professional librarian. I'll be exploring all of my options,
Good.
Obviously.
Good, Karen. Thank you.
I want to grow the programming, but I also, don't want to be hospitalized.
Yep.
If I can avoid it.
Internships take some work, but still, Okay.
So.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Mr. Belcourt?
Mr. Sullivan, so one of the things that I would be looking at is some form of digital document management, starting small and looking initially in the selectman's office. And part of the reason why I'd like to stay on top of this issue is, as you may know, there was a push to change the public records law, and there's much debate about instant access to public records, and in order to make ourselves compliant with any law that would pass, we would want to be able to have something that would give the public the opportunity to access documents on a quick basis. As Michelle knows, we spend a lot of time looking for things in the office, and this would help us by cutting back on search time, but it would also give the public the ability to access documents online without having to contact the office and make a public records request. And again, if the law would change and be passed, we might need to roll this out on a wider basis throughout the community. Cost of that is about $8,000. It's not a capital request, it's not huge. I'd like to start small and initially take hold of the Selectman's office, and I will make a proposal in my budget on that.
Mr. Massey?
Can I speak for Jonathan? Does the drawers go away when you do that?
No, what we would do is use it going forward.
Okay.
So, we might want to go back and look at things like Selectmen's minutes and scan Selectmen's minutes going back forever. And certain things we want to look going backwards, but other things we want to draw a line and start to look at it going forward as of a certain date.
I think what he meant was,
The gray
He wants
files?
to get rid of his stool so he doesn't have to go up to the top of his drawer anymore.
Oh, your stuff in the,
Yeah, that's what he's referring to.
there's plenty of.
the third one down, what do you thought, Paul?
Oh, it's probably eye level.
The only thing I do want to note is that we have a homegrown town webpage, and some of this, and that's maintained by our town accountant, who does an outstanding job. Most towns don't have that, and they pay tens of thousands of dollars to a service that provides a municipal webpage, and I know that whenever I need information to be posted, Debbie does it right away, and that's it's cost savings to the town.
Well, Mr. Joseph brought up earlier, when it comes time to scan that could be a nice senior work-off project.
It sure could be a nice project.
Probably a cheaply paid intern that may be looking for.
Hey, just so you know, I don't have a problem with looking at the stipend that we do pay,
That's actually a really good idea.
Deb, to do that work. I tell you what, in all these years, I've never heard a single peep of a complaint, either about quality, access, or willingness to do the work. And I think that needs to be recognized. It's not a big amount of money, but I think we ought to look at that.
Well, we got the staffing analysis, so everything and anything will be included. That's not staffing per se, but it's a position. Next up, student representative. Welcome back, Alex. I haven't seen you in a couple of meetings.
Yeah, Happy New Year.
Yes, you too.
So midterm exams begin this week, final set of them,
Yeah, nice.
and they begin on Friday and continue into Tuesday and Wednesday and Thursday next week because there's no school on Monday for Martin Luther King Day. The girls' basketball team is off to a 2-4 start, and they play a game on Tuesday at the school against Groton Dunstable and away on Friday against Wachusett. The boys are off to a strong 5-2 start, and they play on Tuesday away at Groton Dunstable and home on Friday versus Wachusett, which should be a really good game. It'll be like a battle of the records because we'll both have the same records going into it. The boys traveled to Bill Ricca on Sunday, which is kind of a hike, and Posey, or Michael Raposey, most people know him as Posey, scored his 1,000th point on the second game of the season this year, so that's pretty. It's the second person in Shepherd Hill to score 1,000 points. And like I said, there's no school on Monday for Martin Luther King Day, and college acceptances have been coming in for all the seniors. They'll be posting pages on like the school websites, and the drama club did host a really good, strong play this past weekend on Friday and Saturday. They hosted the Crucible at the school, and I heard very good reviews about it. I couldn't go, but
How about your college acceptance? Has it gone out yet?
yeah, I've heard back from 2 schools. I've heard back from Anna Maria and Keene State.
And they were both glowing.
Why wouldn't he be?
Absolutely no reason not to be.
Thank you, Alex. Good report.
Thank you.
Board member comments. Mr. Ruda.
just so you know, I'm cutting a check to Anna Maria for one's textbook tomorrow, Anatomy and Physiology, sophomore year, $475.
You're way too
You
old.
can't
to be
rent it,
sophomore.
you can't buy it used, because they update it every single semester. So the question is, anatomy and physiology, do bones change? Have bones changed in over 100 years? Hundreds of years have passed, and there's been no change in human anatomy and physiology. Yet, the book can't stay the same from day to day.
You know, I'm going to start crossing my fingers now that I will take that
$475
class.
for one textbook.
Yeah, I'm going to cross my fingers now that hopefully I don't have to take anatomy in college.
Hopefully the course gets passed.
Oh, there's no question that the course will get passed.
All right.
Mr. Massey.
Hi, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I had talked to the Dudley Little League people, and they'd asked me to pass along a message to everybody. And they wanted to let everybody know that registration is now open at dudleylittleleague.com. And this year, there's a new management team in place, and they're offering discounted T-ball. So they really like to start increasing their numbers of kids that have come into the program. If you don't want to do the website, you can come to the next live enrollment, and that will be February 4th here at the Town Hall. So, thank you.
I just have a couple quick things. We got an email update from the chief on a recent situation that made the news. Our department acquitted themselves quite well again, as always. Special thanks to the chief and Sergeant Poplowski and everybody else that was involved. Pass the word, chief. And also, we've had a mild winter so far, and we had a lot of good calls to selectmen and selectmen's office with the condition of the roads. Anybody that followed along know that Worcester dropped the ball, but we had people that traverse Dudley into Oxford who always likes to say they can tell when they get to the Oxford line. Well, this time they said they could tell because Oxford line was a lot worse than how Dudley roads were. So pass the word, Danny. And we know, Chief, you guys mutual aid at a couple fires. As always, Webster, 4. Wow. So pass the word. Good job by your... Right, good job by your men, too. Mr. Fox.
I'm good.
Mr. Joseph.
Two things. One is I'd like to make note that in the recent stats for the fire department EMS, that both fire and EMS are up, that advanced ALS servicing is up dramatically. The second thing I'd like to do is when the cold weather comes, do something that I try to do every single time. If you see police out there on a detail on a freezing day, or you see people working in the road on a freezing day, slow down, ask them if they need a coffee, ask them what they take, and then go get it for them. There's nothing that makes people feel wanted than a little few seconds of courtesy, something like that. I just did it today on a police detail, and I'll tell you, I know they appreciate it, whether it's black or whether it's regular, small or large. So take the time to do something like that so that Dudley, in fact, embodies being a nice place to live.
But no breakfast sandwich with it.
No breakfast sandwich, just coffee.
Just taking advantage.
Oh, hot chocolate.
Town administrator report.
Just a quick update, 61A notice on conversion of agricultural property located at 55 Dudley Oxford Road for commercial purposes, in this case solar generation facilities. There's a 120-day clock that begins upon receipt of the notice. The board will at some point need to take action on this, and this will need to be scheduled for an action before the board of selectmen.
Thank you, sir.
Chances are we're probably not going to do that, right, Greg? So we get this on the next agenda?
Yes, and this is the one where the town already has a signed agreement in place.
Right. So we'll get that typed up and voted on in the next meeting.
Correct.
Unless people have an objection. Hearing none, thank you.
Then the next thing is the Water and Sewer Commission is scheduled to meet with you on the 25th, which is your next meeting concerning the superintendent compensation proposal, and I'll make my recommendation that the board ask me for at that meeting. Thank you.
That's in public or?
Public session.
Okay, got it.
Departmental communications, reading none. Adjournment, unless anybody
move
wants
we
to stick
adjourn.
around.
Second.
By affirmation,
Aye.
Thank you.
unanimous.
Everybody.
We're gonna.